Sarah Martinez grew up in a small town where people believed girls should learn cooking, not fighting. Her father worked at the local factory, and her mother cleaned houses for wealthy families. They were good people, but they never understood why their daughter spent hours practicing martial arts moves she learned from old movies on their tiny television. Every morning, Sarah woke up before sunrise to run through the empty streets. The other kids laughed when they saw her doing push-ups in the school playground. The boys said she was trying too hard to be tough. The girls whispered that she was weird and would never find a husband. But Sarah didn't care about their opinions. Something deep inside her soul told her she was meant for something bigger than this small-town life. When Sarah turned 18, she decided to join the military. Her parents were shocked. Her father shook his head and said the army was no place for a young woman. Her mother cried, worried that her daughter would get hurt or killed. The neighbors talked behind their backs, saying the Martinez family had raised their daughter wrong. Even her closest friends tried to convince her to stay home and work at the local diner instead. Sarah walked into the military recruitment office on a hot Tuesday morning. The sergeant behind the desk looked her up and down with suspicious eyes. He was a big man with scars on his hands and a voice like thunder. When Sarah said she wanted to join the Special Forces, he actually laughed out loud. He told her that Special Forces training was the hardest thing in the world, and that even strong men often failed to complete it. But Sarah had made up her mind. She signed the papers and prepared to leave for basic training. Her family came to see her off at the bus station. Her mother packed her favorite cookies and hugged her tight. Her father gave her $20 and told her to call home every week. As the bus pulled away from the station, Sarah watched her small town disappear behind the hills, knowing she might never see it the same way again. Basic training was everything the
I
sergeant
understand
had
the
warned her
risks,
about, and
but we cannot
worse.
proceed without
The drill
confirmation.
instructors screamed at the new soldiers from morning until night. They had to wake up at 4 in the morning and run for miles before breakfast. Sarah's body ached in places she didn't even know existed. Many nights, she fell asleep so tired that she didn't even remember hitting her pillow. The other recruits were mostly young men who had grown up playing sports and lifting weights. They were bigger and stronger than Sarah, and they made sure she knew it. During physical training, they would finish their exercises while Sarah was still struggling to complete half of them. Some of them made jokes about how she should quit and go home to bake cookies like other girls. The worst part was that even some of the female recruits agreed with them. Sarah's bunk mate was a girl named Jennifer from California. Jennifer was tall and athletic, but she thought Sarah was crazy for wanting to try Special Forces training. She would tell Sarah that being a regular soldier was good enough for women, and that trying to do everything men could do was just asking for trouble. Jennifer meant well, but her words hurt Sarah more than all the insults from the male recruits combined. During weapons training, Sarah discovered she had excellent aim. While other recruits struggled to hit their targets, Sarah could shoot accurately from long distances. The instructor noticed her skill and gave her extra practice time. This made some of the other recruits jealous and angry. They said she was getting special treatment because she was a girl, even though Sarah worked twice as hard as anyone else to prove herself worthy of respect. The physical training was the hardest part for Sarah. She was smaller than most recruits, so exercises like rope climbing and heavy lifting were extremely difficult for her. Every muscle in her body screamed with pain, but she refused to quit. When other recruits were resting, Sarah would practice more. She would do extra push-ups and sit-ups in her free time. She studied military tactics books while others watched television or wrote letters home. After 3 months of basic training, it was time
This
for
is
Special
unacceptable.
Forces
You need to
selection.
explain yourself.
Only a
I
few
did what I
recruits
had to
from
do.
each basic
There's
training
no other
class
way.
were even allowed to try. Sarah's drill instructor told her she could apply, but he warned her that she would probably fail. He said Special Forces training was designed for the strongest and toughest soldiers, and that women usually couldn't handle the pressure and physical demands. Sarah applied anyway. The night before selection began, she called her parents from the base phone. Her mother asked if she was eating enough, and her father asked if she was being careful. Sarah told them she was fine, but she didn't tell them how scared she really was. She didn't want them to worry more than they already did. She also didn't want to give them another reason to ask her to come home. The selection process started with a physical fitness test that was much harder than anything in basic training. The candidates had to run 20 miles carrying heavy backpacks. Then, they had to complete an obstacle course that included climbing walls, crawling through mud, and swimming across a cold river. Sarah finished last in almost every event, but she finished. Many stronger candidates quit before completing all the challenges. During the psychological tests, Sarah faced questions about her motivation and mental toughness. The officers wanted to know why a small-town girl thought she could handle Special Forces missions. They asked her what she would do if captured by enemies, how she would react under extreme stress, and whether she could kill someone if necessary to protect her teammates. Sarah answered honestly, but she could see doubt in their eyes. The other candidates included former college athletes, experienced soldiers, and men who had been preparing for Special Forces their entire lives. Sarah felt out of place among these impressive people. She overheard conversations about advanced military tactics and combat experience that she knew nothing about. Sometimes she wondered if everyone was right, and she really was foolish to think she could succeed in this environment. But every time Sarah felt like quitting, she remembered why she had left home. She remembered the feeling that she was meant for something special. She remembered all the people who had told her she wasn't strong enough, smart enough, or tough enough. She used their doubt as fuel to push herself harder. When her body wanted to give up, her determination kept her going. The selection process lasted 2 weeks. Every day, more candidates were eliminated. Some quit because the training was too hard. Others were removed because the instructors decided they didn't have the right attitude or skills. Sarah watched good soldiers pack their bags and leave, knowing that her turn might come at any moment. She lived each day expecting to be told she wasn't good enough to continue. On the final day of selection, only 12 candidates remained out of the original 50. Sarah was amazed to still be there. She had survived everything the instructors had thrown at her. She had proven that determination could overcome physical limitations. But she still didn't know if she had done enough to be accepted into the Special Forces program. The instructors kept their opinions to themselves, and Sarah would have to wait for their final decision. Sarah waited 3 long days for the selection results. During those days, she tried to stay calm, but her mind kept racing with worry. She cleaned her equipment over and over again, wrote letters to her family that she never sent, and practiced combat drills in her spare time. The other remaining candidates were just as nervous, but they seemed more confident than Sarah felt inside her heart. When the results finally came, Sarah's name was not on the acceptance list. The commander called her into his office to explain the decision. He told her she had shown incredible determination and heart, but the physical standards were simply too high for someone of her size and build. He suggested she consider other military careers where she could still serve her country with honor and distinction. Sarah felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. All those months of training, all the pain and sacrifice, all the doubt from others that she had tried so hard to prove wrong, none of it had mattered. She walked back to her barracks in a daze, wondering what she would tell her family and friends back home. The people who had said she wasn't strong enough had been right after all. That night, Sarah sat on her bunk and seriously considered leaving the military altogether. Maybe she should go home, get a normal job, and forget about her dreams of being something special. Maybe everyone had been trying to protect her from this exact disappointment. Maybe she really wasn't cut out for this life, and it was time to accept reality and move on to something easier. But the next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Colonel James Harrison knocked on Sarah's barracks door just after breakfast. He was a legend in the Special Forces community, a man who had served in dangerous missions around the world for over 20 years. Sarah had never spoken to him directly, but she knew his reputation. Everyone said he was the toughest and smartest officer in the entire military base. Colonel Harrison asked Sarah to walk with him around the training grounds. He spoke quietly, telling her he had been watching her during the selection process. He said he had noticed something special about her that the other instructors had missed. While they were focused on physical strength and size, he had been watching her mental toughness and problem-solving abilities under extreme pressure. The colonel explained that Special Forces missions weren't just about being the biggest or strongest soldier. They required intelligence, creativity, and the ability to keep going when everything seemed hopeless. He had seen Sarah demonstrate all of these qualities during her training. When other candidates gave up or complained, Sarah found ways to complete her tasks. When problems seemed impossible, she kept thinking until she found solutions. Colonel Harrison told Sarah about a new special unit he was forming. This unit would handle missions that required different skills than traditional special forces operations. They would need soldiers who could think outside the box, adapt to unusual situations, and succeed through intelligence and determination rather than just physical power. He believed Sarah would be perfect for this type of work. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. After days of disappointment and self-doubt, here was a colonel offering her exactly what she had dreamed of achieving. But she was also scared. What if she failed again? What if she wasn't really as special as the colonel thought? What if this was just another chance for people to prove she wasn't good enough for military service? The colonel seemed to read her thoughts. He told her that doubt was natural, but that the best soldiers learned to use their fears as motivation rather than letting them become limitations. He said Sarah had already proven her toughness by surviving the selection process when bigger and stronger candidates had quit. Now she needed to trust in her abilities and take the next step forward. Sarah accepted the colonel's offer. The training for his special unit was different from anything she had experienced before. Instead of just physical challenges, they focused on mental puzzles, language skills, cultural studies, and unconventional warfare tactics. Sarah discovered she was excellent at learning new languages and understanding different cultures. Her small size, which had been a disadvantage in regular special forces training, became an advantage in covert operations. The other members of Colonel Harrison's unit were an unusual group of soldiers. Some were former special forces who had been injured and needed different types of missions. Others were specialists in technology, languages, or psychology. What they all had in common was that they didn't fit the typical military stereotype, but they each had unique skills that made them valuable in specific situations. Sarah's first real mission came 6 months after joining the unit. The team was sent to a foreign country to gather information about terrorist activities in a small mountain village. Sarah's job was to pose as a traveling teacher and blend in with the local population. Her language skills and ability to connect with people made her perfect for this role. The mission was more dangerous than Sarah had expected. The village was controlled by armed groups who were suspicious of outsiders. Sarah had to be extremely careful not to reveal her true identity or purpose. She spent weeks building trust with local families, teaching their children basic reading and math skills while secretly observing the terrorist operations in the area. One day, Sarah discovered that the terrorists were planning a major attack on a nearby city. Hundreds of innocent people would be killed if the attack succeeded. She needed to get this information to her team quickly, but she was being watched by suspicious villagers who thought she might be a spy. Any wrong move could blow her cover and put her life in serious danger. Sarah used her creativity to solve the problem. She created a simple code using children's drawings and games. She taught the local children to draw pictures that looked innocent, but actually contained important military information. When her teammates came to the village posing as aid workers, the children showed them their drawings, passing along Sarah's intelligence without anyone realizing what was happening. The information Sarah gathered helped prevent the terrorist attack and saved many lives. Colonel Harrison was impressed with her performance and told her she had natural instincts for intelligence work. He said she had succeeded precisely because she approached problems differently than traditional soldiers. Her empathy and communication skills had accomplished what force and intimidation could never have achieved. Word of Sarah's success began to spread through the military community. Other officers started requesting her for special assignments that required unconventional approaches. Sarah worked undercover in dangerous locations, gathered intelligence from difficult sources, and completed missions that seemed impossible to everyone except Colonel Harrison, who had believed in her potential from the beginning. But success also brought new challenges. Some traditional military leaders still didn't understand why a small woman from a tiny town was being given important missions instead of bigger, stronger soldiers. They complained that Sarah was getting special treatment and that her successes were just luck rather than skill. These criticisms hurt Sarah's feelings, but they also motivated her to work even harder to prove her worth. 2 years after joining Colonel Harrison's unit, Sarah faced her most challenging mission yet. Intelligence reports indicated that a dangerous criminal organization was trafficking weapons through a network of businesses in several major cities. The group was extremely careful and had avoided detection by traditional law enforcement methods. They needed someone who could infiltrate their operation from the inside. Sarah was chosen to pose as a young businesswoman looking for investment opportunities. She would need to gain the trust of the criminal leaders while gathering evidence of their illegal activities. The mission would take months to complete, and Sarah would be mostly on her own, unable to contact her team except in extreme emergencies. If her cover was blown, she would likely be killed before help could arrive. Colonel Harrison spent weeks preparing Sarah for this assignment. He helped her create a detailed background story and taught her about international business practices. Sarah studied financial documents, learned about import and export regulations, and practiced speaking like someone who had grown up wealthy instead of in a small working-class town. The transformation was so complete that even her old friends might not have recognized her. The mission began in a bustling city where Sarah rented an expensive apartment and started attending business meetings and social events. She had to act confident and sophisticated while secretly feeling terrified and out of place. The criminal organization controlled several legitimate businesses as fronts for their illegal operations, and Sarah needed to get invited into their inner circle without arousing suspicion. Sarah's breakthrough came when she met Elena Vasquez, the wife of one of the organization's leaders. Elena was lonely and isolated, struggling with the stress of knowing about her husband's dangerous business activities. Sarah befriended Elena by showing genuine kindness and understanding, something Elena rarely experienced in her world of criminal associates and fake relationships. Through Elena, Sarah gained access to private parties and meetings where the organization's leaders discussed their operations. She learned about weapons shipments, money laundering schemes, and plans for expanding their criminal network. Sarah memorized every detail, knowing that one mistake could expose her and put innocent people in danger. She also grew genuinely fond of Elena, which made the deception even more difficult emotionally. The most dangerous moment came when the organization's security chief became suspicious of Sarah's background story. He started investigating her business credentials and asking detailed questions about her past experiences. Sarah had to think quickly to maintain her cover while this man tried to trap her in lies. She used her knowledge of small-town life to create believable details about her fictional wealthy upbringing. Sarah also discovered that the organization was planning something much worse than weapons trafficking. They were preparing to sell military-grade explosives to terrorist groups planning attacks in major cities. Thousands of innocent people could die if these sales went through. Sarah knew she had to act quickly, but she also knew that moving too fast could blow her cover before she gathered enough evidence to stop the entire operation. Working carefully over several weeks, Sarah photographed documents, recorded conversations, and mapped out the organization's entire network. She used her access to Elena's social circle to learn about meetings and shipments that would have been impossible to discover through traditional surveillance. Sarah's ability to gain people's trust and make them feel comfortable was her greatest weapon in this dangerous game. The final phase of the mission required Sarah to attend a secret meeting where the organization's leaders would finalize the explosive sale. This meeting would provide the evidence needed to arrest everyone involved, but it would also be extremely dangerous for Sarah. She would be surrounded by armed criminals in an isolated location with no backup nearby. Colonel Harrison wanted to abort the mission, but Sarah convinced him she could handle it. At the meeting, Sarah wore a hidden camera and recording device while pretending to discuss investment opportunities with the criminal leaders. She listened as they described their plans to supply explosives for terrorist attacks in 3 different countries. Sarah had to control her emotions and continue acting like a businesswoman interested only in making money while hearing details about planned mass murder. The meeting was interrupted when the security chief announced he had discovered Sarah's true identity. He had finally broken through her cover story and learned she was an undercover military operative. The room fell silent as armed men surrounded Sarah, and she realized her life was probably about to end. She thought about her parents back in her small hometown and wondered if they would ever learn what really happened to their daughter. But Sarah's months of building relationships paid off in an unexpected way. Elena Vasquez suddenly spoke up, defending Sarah and claiming the security chief was wrong. Elena had grown to trust and care about Sarah so much that she refused to believe her friend could be a spy. Other members of the organization who had also grown fond of Sarah joined Elena in defending her, creating enough doubt and confusion for Sarah to escape. Sarah used the chaos to activate a hidden signal that alerted her backup team to her location. Within minutes, military and law enforcement units surrounded the meeting location and arrested everyone involved in the criminal organization. The evidence Sarah had gathered led to the prevention of multiple terrorist attacks and the dismantling of an international weapons trafficking network that had operated successfully for years. Colonel Harrison met Sarah after the mission and told her she had accomplished something truly remarkable. Her ability to gain people's trust and think creatively under pressure had succeeded where traditional military approaches had failed. He said Sarah had proven that strength came in many different forms, and that the most powerful weapon was often intelligence and empathy rather than physical force. News of Sarah's success reached the highest levels of military leadership. She received commendations and was offered positions in various elite units. But more importantly to Sarah, she finally felt like she had found her true calling. She had discovered that her small size, her empathy, and her ability to connect with people were not weaknesses to overcome, but strengths to develop and use. Sarah eventually became an instructor, training other soldiers who didn't fit traditional military stereotypes. She taught them that success in special operations often required creativity, intelligence, and emotional strength rather than just physical power. Many of her students were people who had been told they weren't tough enough or strong enough for military service, just like Sarah had been told years earlier. Years later, when Sarah returned to her hometown for her parents' anniversary celebration, she was surprised by how different everything looked. The same streets and buildings were there, but Sarah saw them through new eyes. The people who had once doubted her strength now treated her with respect and admiration. But more importantly, Sarah had learned to respect and admire herself. Sarah's story spread throughout the military and inspired many other people who had been told they weren't strong enough to pursue their dreams. She proved that real strength wasn't about physical size or traditional toughness. Real strength was about refusing to give up, finding creative solutions to impossible problems, and believing in yourself even when everyone else doubted your abilities. Colonel Harrison had seen this truth from the beginning, but it took years of challenging missions and dangerous situations for Sarah to fully understand it herself.